are so excited to be back on the show and actually back on video. So now we have a set. We actually decided to build a set, to create a set, and sit down and put the cameras in front of us.
Yeah. And so part of why I'm so excited, because I think the intentionality we're coming with in this season, not that we weren't being intentional before, but I think it was so easy to get life in the way and not prioritize this conversation. And recently we read somewhere that there was a study done that over 48% of entrepreneurs end up in divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us, that really lit up something in us. One, because we are living every day.
I was honestly in
the
shock.
reality. And I mean, I wasn't shocked, because when you look at the reasons why, right? It's stress, it's the time management factor and how you're busy all the time and you're wearing all these different hats. And then, especially you add in the uniqueness of doing it with your spouse. So now there's no separation of anything. It's just this mishmash of constant going on, this roller coaster. And then let alone that part, right? The emotional part of like, some days are with entrepreneurship, the highs are really high, but then those lows are really low.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no you can't just turn the switch off, right? When you are building with your spouse. And so I'm not surprised by seeing that number so high, but I did feel, and I know you do too, feel this sense of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And we get asked all the time, how do you guys work together? How do you do it? I would never be able to do that. And so while we want to tailor these conversations to couples who are working together and building together and being very intentional about even the couples we're inviting to be on with us this season,
Mm-hmm.
is really geared around that.
Yeah.
And will these conversations only apply to couples who are working together? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because we believe the vision of CoCalled is that it's these two people coming together for a single vision, no matter what that looks like, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, or you're still building together as a family. And so those concepts will still remain. I think a lot of the conversations that are going to be had here will still translate for married couples in general, but we do want to be very intentional in talking to and having those very unique conversations that are relevant to couples that are working and building together.
Yeah. And I mean, using our lives as an example, because, it's not always doom and gloom, but it's not always, rainbows and butterflies. And building together, like you said, people asking us, how do you guys do it? Sometimes we don't know, because sometimes it's hard and it gets hard. And jumping into this podcast, it's getting into that hard place of even just sharing our own experiences. And hopefully it helps you guys.
Hopefully we're still married after this. maybe
not, since that divorce rate's so high.
No, don't speak that. Stop. Don't even say that.
I was really in shock that it was 48%, to be quite frank. I know divorce gets tossed all over nowadays, but that's almost half of the population in the US.
But think about how, well, again, it's 48% for couples that are working together. So not everybody's working together.
But what's the rate for
but it is,
parents
it's
with
really
special needs?
Yeah, it's over 80%.
80%.
Yeah, so we've got two statistics stacked up really high against us. But I do want to dive into some very practical things. And I want these conversations to also be very practical, because I think sometimes we hear these things and we hear these concepts and it's like, they're so up in the air, and it's like, right, but how do you do it? Just tell me, what does the day in your life look like? What happens when conflict comes up? Like, what do these things look like? And
so you want me to be me? You want me to answer like I would?
Yes, I want you to answer how you would.
You heard it here.
Oh my gosh. But I know in this episode, we talked about that it would be important to share, I think, the cornerstone, or at least one of them, of why we work so well together. And part of it is that I really truly believe we believe we are building a legacy and not just a business. And so for us, our marriage matters more
Yeah.
than the company we're building.
100%.
And I think that's part of, why we work well.
We set our goal right from the beginning, knowing, hey, listen, if this is going to sacrifice what we've been building for so many years, it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And to be quite frank, I mean, when we first started, it was awesome, because I remember Carolina always saying like, oh, the day we get to walk to work together, or the day we get to be in the office together or whatever. And then we finally were doing it, and it was so nice. But in business, I mean, everyone who's in business knows like it's an up and down, it's a roller coaster. And sometimes, the highs are highs and the lows are lows. And you have to understand and know, like, are you in it together in those lows of lows?
Mm-hmm.
And are you choosing your marriage in those lows of lows?
Right.
Because everything that goes through and is done here at our business goes through both of us.
Right.
And it could be very easy to just, push one of us away and say like, well, she doesn't need to know this, or he doesn't need to know this. But no, we know that even in the smallest things, like being in interviews and being on a magazine or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, you're the owner. No, I'm the co-founder, because we are co-owners in this place.
Right.
Like, we take care of even the small things.
Absolutely.
And I think that lays off that foundation of like, hey, I respect you and I honor you as much as you do me. And that's us building the same legacy.
Yeah, for sure. To that point of marriage being our first ministry, and I'm going to bring in the word because
we love the word.
It's just, no, but you always like, you don't have to preach.
She's a pastor. In her heart of hearts, she's a pastor. I'm not.
But in Mark 10, it says, what therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. And, this verse it's like at every single wedding, right? They do this, and that's how the pastor or the priest, or they usually send off the couple with this declaration. And I think a lot of times we hear that and we see that, and we assume, infidelity, we assume that there will be another person.
Sin. It would be sin.
Well, that there would be another person specifically that would come in and destroy this marriage, and he's going to run off with someone, or she's going to run off with someone. But I really think it's actually, to your point, sin, that we can allow a business to be the thing that separates. We can allow greed, we can allow ambition, we can allow productivity, quote unquote. We can allow all these different concepts that, we think we're doing it. We need it. We need the hustle. The hustle has to happen. The grind has to happen. And it's like,
a mistress isn't just
right.
a person. A mistress can be an addiction to anything.
Absolutely. Anything that we give permission to come in and separate. And so, and the thing is that it takes a choice. And I love that that's why, when it says, let not man separate, well, Carolina, it wasn't man, it was hustle, right? But who chose to put the hustle above the relationship? Who chose to put, right? So it really does put the responsibility back on us to say, what choices are we making that are getting in the way?
It's funny because just some practical examples of where we have chosen, to kind of refrain from focusing on, mistresses.
Yeah.
Is we were featured on Yahoo News and some other articles online. And when the writer came to me and he said, which I said earlier already, but I want to say it again, Carlos, you're the owner. So they put me as the owner, and they didn't even mention Carolina. And when they sent us a draft to verify and to approve, I was like, no. Change the owner and keep co-founders Carlos and Carolina Flores. And I was very proud of myself, one, because I chose to honor my wife, because it could have easily been, oh, just let it be and it doesn't matter.
Right.
But it mattered to me to give you your place as my co-founder.
Yeah.
Because if I would have had another person co-found with me,
right,
that would have been the case. So why wouldn't I have done that with my wife?
Right.
Why would I not have given her her place to the masses when it came to, I could have easily been greedy and been like, you know what, this is good. I'm the owner. But no,
And
it's the little
justify it.
choices.
You could have justified it and been like, what's good for me is good for us, babe. Like,
Hmm.
you don't worry about it. And it's like, that's
Exactly.
not the point, because we're building this on honor. And again, to your point, that marriage being
Yeah.
our first ministry, like, it goes back to that. It goes back
Yeah.
to, no, because I care more about our marriage
Yeah.
than I do about our business partnership.
And the
I,
world wants to give you glory. It
yeah.
wants to. And that's where, like, I think we have to be very careful when it comes to like recognition and like vanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I could have easily taken that. And I also like to bring in the word. I'm not a pastor, but Ephesians 5:25 says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. My responsibility, and I take this verse to heart and I read it endear to me, but it's like, I want to love you aside of loving me, even when I don't like you. But I want to make sure that in this, I respect you and I honor you and I love you. And
Right.
just in being able to just not us being married, but we are co-founders, co-laborers in this whole business venture.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next point, which is stewardship and ownership of a business and life.
I love this. This was such a big turning point, I think, for me personally, just in my own walk as an entrepreneur and as owner, and then obviously being able to do that together. But there's a difference. We have to understand that there is a difference between stewardship and ownership. And I really think this is the difference between building a business as a Christian and with a kingdom mindset, and building a business just because or without God. Stewardship puts God in place of owner.
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, this is God's vision. This is God's place. We don't carry the burden or the responsibility of, not the responsibility, but I guess just the burden of the outcome. Our job is to be responsible, to show up in excellence, to bear his image. Our job is to show up being obedient and faithful to what's been given to us, and multiply it.
Exactly.
Right. And so that multiplication is going to come if we obey and do things in his way.
Exactly.
It's his job to determine what the steps are and what that vision is. And so I think for us, that really takes the weight off. And it also takes,
and it's easier said than done.
It's way easier said than done. But I think what's really good is that it takes away the pressure from each other.
Yeah.
Right. So now there's no room to play the blame game. This isn't your fault. This isn't my fault. We both showed up. We were both faithful. And whatever the outcome's going to be, that's the Lord to decide. Our job was to show up, and we did that, and we did that faithfully. And I see you day in and day out doing that. So if the business is not where it needs to be, then we need to take a look and see, okay, what's going on. But if we are proven that we've done everything we've had to do, then we can understand, hey, we're just in a waiting season, and that's okay too. And that's God's part. And I'm not going to sit here and blame you.
Which is easy to blame.
Why aren't you? And this is because you made that decision. It eliminates that. And I think that's also been pivotal in our relationship.
No, and it's just understanding that if God brought you, he'll bring you through. And many times, even in this, where it's like, oh, this recognition, like how many times do we say, like, we're here because God, we're here because God brought. Clients have actually been here not through our own intelligence or abilities. It's God has brought literally everything. And keeping that at the foundation, again, building that, it's like, at the end of the day, like, God, do you? If you're going to provide, provide. If you're not going to provide, don't provide. But we can't, and it's, like I said, easier said than done, because it's been so many times where I'm just like, God, why are we here?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Am I failing? Do I suck at what I do? And you start, first you blame yourself, then you blame others, and then you start blaming God. And it's like, at the end of the day, when you look at it as a stewardship, which we're stewards in everything. We're here on this earth being a steward. We don't really own this, and we don't own our bodies. So it's like, how can I
just be responsible
for what I have and do what I can at the time?
Yeah. And I think that alleviates like I said, the blame game, all these other different things, but it alleviates the pressure to the point where we can then say, hey, we've done all we can.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to do. Now there's room for play.
Mm.
And I think that is so important for us. Like, and I know we've had many times.
Could you give us an example of like,
yeah, like, see, well,
where God has like, where you've been like, I gotta do, but
yeah, I mean,
should I not?
we've absolutely had times, and it's no secret. We've been very transparent and open about that, where, you know, financially we're not where we want to be. And we're trying to strive to, what else can we be doing? What else can we be doing? And we're working at all times of the day, and we're not sleeping. We're not taking care of our bodies. We're not doing all these different things. And we're definitely not spending time with each other, and we'll just go, 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 go. And I mean, very transparently, I know that there's been times where days go by where we haven't been intimate because we're just so exhausted from working all the time and realizing, wait a minute, we've stepped out of stewardship and we're in ownership.
Yeah.
We are now being disobedient.
Yeah.
Too much work can sometimes be disobedience. We're not keeping Sabbath. We're not resting.
Yeah.
We're not being intimate. We're not leaving room for play.
Yeah.
Not just with the kids, but ourselves. When was the last time we sat down and had a movie night, you know, or just like really be intentional about spending time with each other? And so,
and you would think of it would be like, I'm working, babe. I'm doing this for us.
You could
I'm
justify
doing
it
this for us.
100%.
But the sacrifice
It's a
is
slippery
great.
slope.
Like, you're sacrificing so many things, where it's like even sacrificing time as a family, which is so important to our kids. For example, we do Friday movie nights.
Right.
And there's been times where it's like, I have to get a project out.
Right.
But I've learned that it's like these moments with my children are so valuable that if I sacrifice one or two, they'll be so marked by it, where it's like, oh, what was Friday movie night?
Right.
Oh, daddy was working.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's the same for marriage, right? Like, if we don't take that time, and again, it's easy for both of us.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is you or me. It's both of us who've just been like, go, 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 work, work, work. And it's like, hi, we're still married. If we lose this business tomorrow, what's going to be left? Yeah. And so I think, bringing to our third point, right? So we've talked about how we keep marriage as our ministry. We've talked about how stewardship and ownership and knowing the difference and leaning into that. I think the next part of that, and what...
Before you jump into that last part,
yeah,
you had a point here, which was, I think is so, and I don't think we mentioned it, but it's so key. It's surrendering our ambitions to his purpose.
100%.
Sometimes we get so like greedy, where it's like, oh, we want to build, we want to expand, we want to do this, and it's like, but is that what God really wants?
Yeah, that's so true.
Like, we just had a meeting with our landlord about, growing too fast,
right?
And it was like, what was the phrase you told the landlord? The steady growth is what?
Essentially that steady and slow is what gives you that growth.
And it's like, I hadn't heard it, and my mind was like, what? So it's one of those things where it's like, surrender your ambitions. Yeah, they might be amazing, but it's in God's time. So I just wanted to bring that up before you go to the next one.
Yeah, no, I think so true. And it goes to the next thing, is that we are building legacy, and legacy is not something that gets built overnight. And so, to your point, surrendering that, how we make business decisions with a kingdom-minded perspective, we're not thinking about what we're going to get in this moment right now, instant gratification the next week and the next month. We're thinking 5 years from now. We're thinking 10 years from now. How do these decisions affect the legacy we're building?
Yeah.
How are these decisions going to affect the reputation, the name we leave behind for when our children are older and people say our names? Like, we've got to think long term. It's a long game, and it's so hard because you're just like, but we got to do it now. Like, this matters now. And it's like, when you have a kingdom mindset, it's not about you. It's about the people around you that you're impacting and influencing. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. And the Bible says that For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? And I know for sure that I don't want to make any decision and I don't want to live any kind of life that is going to get me all the riches, that is going to get me all the goals reached, all the dreams accomplished, if it is going to be at the cost of my soul, of my integrity, of my character. And so I'm just like, we have to keep top of mind that we are building for legacy. And if that means waiting, if that means not growing fast enough, if that means to the world standards, because again, to whose not fast enough to whose standards.
Yeah.
If that means not achieving everything that my flesh would want to achieve, then that's okay.
100%. And it's so easy, yet it's so like complex in its own way. But
so does this mean, Carlos, that people, I feel like we've now discouraged every couple that wants to start a business together?
No, because it goes back
How can we encourage
building the legacy. Like, you have to live life, and this is how we've lived our marriage from starting a family. Like, legacy goes through your descendants, like through your children. Like, that is the legacy you're going to leave behind. So what do we want to teach our children? Yeah, life is hard, whether we would have started a business or not. Like, we got dealt a child with special needs. But regardless of special needs, we want to make sure that legacy is built through him.
Yeah.
And our hope is that he one day can continue the legacy that we built.
And not necessarily this business. I think when we say legacy,
character.
It's a legacy of character. It's a legacy of obedience, of faithfulness, of learning to walk with God and walk in faith and creating impact for those people around you and for the sake of those around you.
There's legacy that's built, for example, in my case, my great-grandfather was a very hardworking man. My grandpa was a very hardworking man. My dad was very hardworking. I am a very hardworking man, which I am.
You are.
So what do I want to show my kids in my character is like, hey, hard work gets you to places. Like, it's not going to be just sit back and enjoy the ride. No, you have to work hard. That's building legacy. So whether you're building a business or you're not, what I will tell you is that building a business has led us to increase our faith, to increase our time together. Because again, a lot of people say, like, how do you do it? How do you work together? It's hard.
Yeah.
Because we see each other all the time.
Like each other.
But we really like each other.
You kind of have to start there.
And we piggyback off each other. We ask for each other's support. But we also are each other. We're like teammates in a team where it's like, hey, you suck at this. You need to get better at this. Yeah. Hey, and sometimes we don't want to hear it, but it is a fact. That's how we co-labor.
And I think, understanding that your calling is unique as a couple, but the world needs it. The world needs it, and God's looking to partner with it. God's looking to see your marriage and say, wow, how can I use that? Yeah. And not because it's perfect, not because you have it all figured out, but because you have a heart and a vision surrendered to him, because you understand that, hey, you know what? I'm going to be faithful with what we have. We're going to be faithful with what we have. Yeah. If what we have is a home that we can open up to people and show them the gift of hospitality, amazing. Yeah. If what you have is this incredible partnership where you're strategic and you're creative and you can come together and build an incredible business that is going to then prosper the kingdom, amazing. Like, I guess the invitation is to look at what you have in your hands that come together, that comes together, that you can use for kingdom purpose.
100%. And you ask, at this point, I feel like we discourage so many couples, but it's like, no, I encourage you. I encourage you to stand strong, to build, to start where you are, whatever it is the Lord's calling you to do. We have so many friends that are starting new businesses together. So many friends that have ministries that are just, going in that next season, and we're seeing them and we're like, we encourage them to like, hey, it's going to be hard, but it's possible.
Yeah.
If you do it together, if you respect each other and you're for each other.
Right.
honestly, the hard times, they're going to be easier than if you're against each other.
Right.
Because we've also seen the other side where there's couples doing business and it's like
Yeah.
I feel like they're not coexisting and co-building together.
Yeah.
It's
And
almost his game or her game.
The next episode, we're going to talk about what are some of the things we wish we knew before we started this business. And I can't wait to dive into that point because we're going to go in depth about that. But yeah, I guess the encouragement is that look what you have in front of you. You know, at the end of the day, whatever you do, your marriage comes first. And remember that. That is your first ministry. This relationship, this man in front of me is my first ministry. And I cannot build this business at the cost of losing this.
Yeah.
And if I see him spiraling, I can't let that happen.
Like crazy.
I will say we need to stop, take a step back, and let's recalibrate. What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need? And go from there.
The biggest thing that we've done is just obey.
Yeah.
We've stepped in faith, we obeyed, we did, and we've worked our asses off because we have.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but I encourage all of you guys, stay obedient, stay the course. All your callings are going to be different. Yeah. And just keep going, keep pushing. And if I may read another scripture to finish off, but Proverbs 19:21. I love Proverbs, like it's one of my favorite books. But many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails.
Amen.
So we can do so many things, but what does God want you to do?
Yeah.
So without further ado, I bring the ending of our show. Remember, guys, like, share, subscribe. Do all the things. We're on Instagram. We are on YouTube. We are on
all the podcast platforms.
All podcast platforms.
But yeah, share if you have a couple in your life that is trying to figure out how to work together, how to build together. Share this episode with them. Share these conversations with them. We are so excited that you are here, that you are listening, supporting. But more than that, we just pray that these conversations would transform your families and your legacies, and that you would be encouraged and just so bold enough to go after what God is calling you and your family to.
Exactly.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.